The sun was low in the sky, its light burning gold across the wide and empty land. A lonely farmer moved slowly through his dry fields, pushing his hands through the hard soil, checking what little crop had survived the season. His life was quiet. His farm was his world, and the silence of the land was his only companion. He stopped for a moment and looked toward the horizon. The air shimmered with heat and dust. Nothing moved there, nothing ever did. Yet his eyes caught a shadow, faint at first, like a trick of the light. He narrowed his gaze. Something, or someone, was walking slowly through the field path. His heart gave a small, uneasy jump. Out here, strangers rarely came. The figure grew clearer as it drew closer. It was not a man. It was not anyone from the nearby village. It was a woman, her body thin and weak, clothes torn from long travel. In her arms she carried something small, fragile. As she stumbled forward, he saw the truth. Two children, both alien in appearance, heads resting weakly against her shoulders. Their skin carried a faint glow, their features unlike humans, yet their suffering looked painfully familiar. The farmer stepped back, uncertain. His first thought was danger. Aliens were rarely trusted in these lands. They came from beyond the valleys, from worlds humans barely understood. To let them near was to invite trouble, whispers, and suspicion. But then he saw her eyes. They were filled not with threat, but with desperate fear. She reached the edge of his field and almost fell, to her knees. The children slipped from her arms, one coughing softly, the other too weak to even lift its head. The mother placed them gently on the ground, then looked up at him. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Please, human, I will work your fields. I will give you my strength. Just feed my children. They are hungry. They cannot go on." The word struck him like a heavy stone. Her voice carried no pride, only the weight of a mother who had reached the edge of hope. She pressed her forehead to the dirt as if begging the land itself. The farmer stood frozen. His heart battled his mind. He remembered the stories told in the village, aliens tricking humans, stealing from them, bringing sickness or war. But here before his own eyes was not a trick. This was a mother at her breaking point, her children trembling with cold though the day was hot. He took a step forward, then stopped again. The children's skin was pale, their breath shallow. One reached a hand toward him, fingers shaking. The gesture was small, but it carried more power than 1,000 words. "Where are you from?" the farmer asked quietly, his voice rough with caution. She lifted her head. "From the East Mountains. Our people were driven out. We walked for days. Many fell behind. Only we remain. Please, if you send us away now, my children will not live through the night." The wind blew across the field, carrying the smell of dust and dry crops. The farmer's heart pounded. He could turn her away and no one would blame him. He owed her nothing. Yet as he looked at the small hands of the children and the silent tears in her eyes, something deep inside him stirred. An old memory of hunger, of being young and helpless, of someone once giving him bread when he had nothing. The silence stretched. The mother bowed her head lower, waiting for judgment. The farmer clenched his fists. Suspense hung heavy in the air. Would he act with fear or with compassion? He knelt slowly, reaching into the small sack at his belt. Inside were 2 pieces of hard bread he had saved for later. His fingers trembled as he pulled them out. He hesitated one last time, looking at the alien mother and her children. Then with a slow breath he placed the bread in her hands. Her eyes widened. For a moment she could not speak. Then she clutched the bread tight, breaking it into small pieces and giving it first to her children. They ate quickly, tears sliding down their faces. The farmer watched, silent, his chest heavy with emotions he did not fully understand. The mother looked up at him again. Her lips moved, whispering words of gratitude too soft to hear. She pressed her forehead to the ground once more, this time not in despair but in thanks. The farmer stood there, uncertain of what he had just begun. The sun lowered, shadows stretching across the field. He knew that from this moment, his life would not remain quiet and simple. A choice had been made, one that would change not only his days but perhaps his very heart. And so the stranger in the fields had arrived, bringing with her a plea that would test the limits of humanity itself. The farmer stood quietly, his shadow long across the field as the sun dipped lower. The alien mother still knelt on the dirt, her children leaning against her side with weak breaths. The bread had given them small strength, but it was not enough to erase the hunger written in their thin faces. The silence between them stretched, heavy, broken only by the sound of dry wind moving across brittle stalks. At last the woman lifted her face. Dust clung to her cheeks, but her eyes burned with the will of someone who refused to surrender. She looked at the farmer as if every part of her soul depended on his next word. "I will not lie to you," she said in a voice that shook yet carried strength. "We have nothing left. No food, no shelter, no land. My people were hunted like animals. We walked through the mountains, but many died on the road. My husband, he was taken when soldiers came. Only I remain to keep them alive. If I must work until my hands bleed, I will. Just give my children a chance to live." Her words were simple, but they struck with the weight of truth. The farmer felt the soil beneath his boots as if it were suddenly heavier, as if his quiet world was shifting. He looked at her children. One boy leaned against her shoulder, too tired to open his eyes. The other girl clutched a small stone in her hand, as if holding it gave her courage. He could see it clearly now. This was not just a traveler passing through. This was a family on the edge of life and death. Still, fear gnawed at his chest. He thought of his neighbors in the village. They spoke often of aliens as thieves, as curses upon the land. They whispered that anyone who gave them shelter would suffer. The farmer knew that if they saw this mother and her children on his land, they would call him a fool. They might even turn against him. Yet the woman's voice pulled him back from those dark thoughts. "Look at me, human. Do you see pride in my face? Do you see deceit? No, you see a mother. I am not here for myself. I am here for them. They have done no wrong, yet they are punished for existing. If you refuse us, I will not curse you. I will simply carry them farther until their feet cannot walk. But know this, if they fall, their last breath will carry your image, the human who could have saved them." Her words cut like a blade, not cruel but honest. The farmer's heart raced. He was not a man of great wealth. His crops were thin. He himself lived with little comfort. Yet compared to this woman and her children, he was a king. He shifted uneasily, gripping the handle of his tool. His throat felt dry as he asked, "Why my fields? Why not the village?" Her gaze lowered, shadow passing over her face. "The village drove us away. They threw stones. They shouted words I could not understand, but I knew their meaning. They would not hear me. They would not see my children as children. They saw only creatures. You were the last hope I saw on the road. I thought, maybe the man who works alone in the fields has a kinder heart." The farmer felt something stir inside him, a strange mix of shame and pride. He had thought himself invisible to the world, yet this alien mother had looked to him as her final chance. One of the children coughed, the sound sharp and painful. The mother pulled him close, whispering softly in her own tongue. The words were strange, flowing like water, yet their meaning was clear. It was comfort. It was love. The farmer swallowed hard. He thought of nights from his own past, when his stomach had been empty, when he had prayed for someone to notice his hunger. He remembered the old man who once gave him bread and water, who asked nothing in return. That act had kept him alive. And now, standing before him, was a mirror of that same moment. The mother looked back at him, her voice breaking again. "Let me work for you. Let me clean your house, tend your fields, guard your land. My hands can carry more than you think. I will ask for no coin, only food enough for them. That is all." Her plea was not just spoken, it was carved into her eyes, into her trembling hands, into the way she held her children as if shielding them from the world itself. The farmer felt the battle inside him. His mind told him to turn away, to protect his quiet life, to avoid trouble. But his heart spoke louder, beating with a question he could not silence. What kind of man lets children starve at his feet? The sun slipped lower, painting the land in red light. The farmer realized that this decision would not only change the fate of the woman and her children, it would also change him. The road of his life split before him, and whichever path he chose, there would be no turning back. He looked once, more at the alien mother, then at the children whose eyes flickered with hope and fear. His silence stretched long, but within it, the seeds of a decision began to take root. The plea of a mother had been spoken. Now it was the farmer's turn to answer. The evening air grew colder as the sun dipped behind the hills. The farmer stood still, staring at the woman and her children. The field around him seemed suddenly alive with silence, every sound sharper, the rustle of dry leaves, the faint cough of the boy, the whisper of the mother's breath as she tried to soothe her little ones. It was as if the whole land waited for him to speak. The farmer's mind was a storm. He thought of his life, simple and small, built on hard work and silence. He had survived many seasons with little, keeping to himself, speaking rarely to the villagers. He thought of his father's voice, always warning him never to trust outsiders, never to let strangers near. And yet, his father was gone now, and this choice was his alone. He looked at the alien children. Their faces were thin, their skin pale with weakness. The girl still held the small stone in her hand, as if it were treasure, as if hope could be carried in something so simple. The boy leaned against his mother's shoulder, eyes half closed, fighting sleep that looked too close to death. The farmer's chest tightened. He knew hunger when he saw it. He had worn the same face once, years ago when war had taken food from his own table. He had begged once, and he had been saved by a stranger's kindness. Could he now deny the same to another? Yet fear gripped him. He imagined the villagers' angry voices. He could hear them already, mocking him, cursing him for letting aliens live on his land. Some would say he had betrayed his own kind. Some might even come at night with fire and stones. His hand closed around the tool at his side. He could send her away. He could tell himself it was not his burden. If she and her children fell on the road, he would never know. He could walk back into his house and let the silence return. But the mother's words echoed inside him. Do you see pride in my face? Do you see deceit? No. You see a mother. Her eyes had not lied. He could not forget the way she bent low, begging not for herself, but for the small lives clinging to her. There was no trick, no hidden blade. There was only love, raw and desperate. The farmer stepped forward slowly. His boots crunched on the dry soil. The mother tensed, clutching her children closer, unsure of his choice. He crouched down in front of them. The boy's lips were cracked, the girl's eyes too large for her thin face. The farmer reached into his bag again. He pulled out the last of his bread, holding it out in his rough hand. Eat, he said simply. The children stared at it as if it were gold. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She took the bread with shaking hands and broke it into small pieces, placing them carefully into her children's mouths. The boy chewed slowly. The girl clutched the piece like a gift, nibbling carefully, so it would last. The farmer rose again, looking toward his farmhouse. It was small, only 2 rooms and a shed. It was his whole world. Letting them inside would mean sharing what little he had. But as he looked back at the children, he knew the choice was already made. You will stay, he said at last, his voice firm though his chest trembled. But you will work as you promised, and you will not bring trouble to my door. The mother's head bowed low, her forehead touching the dirt again. We will not fail you, she whispered. You have given us life. I will keep your fields. Strong. I swear it. The farmer turned away quickly, not wanting her to see the strange heat rising in his eyes. He was not used to gratitude. He was not used to anyone depending on him. He led them toward the house, each step heavy with the weight of what he had done. The children walked slowly, leaning against their mother. but there was new strength in their steps. When they reached the small farmhouse, the farmer opened the door. The smell of old wood and smoke drifted out. He lit a lamp and set it on the table. The alien family stepped inside, their eyes wide, as if they had entered a palace. The farmer said little. He gave them water, the last of his stored grain, and a blanket to cover the children. The mother whispered thanks again and again, her voice shaking as she tucked the little ones close. That night, as the farmer lay in his bed, he stared at the ceiling. The silence of the land was broken now. He had opened his door, and with it, a part of his heart he thought long buried. Fear still lingered, but it was joined by something stronger, purpose. For the first time in years, he was not alone. The decision had been made. The farmer did not yet know the cost or the danger it might bring, but he knew this. He could not have chosen otherwise. The morning sun rose pale across the land, touching the farmer's field with a weak light. The air was cool, but the promise of heat waited in the hours ahead. The farmer stepped out of his house and found the alien mother already standing there, her children still asleep on the blanket inside. She had not rested long, yet her hands were ready for work. "You said I would labor," she told him in a steady voice. "Show me where to begin." The farmer studied her for a long moment. He had not expected her to rise so early, nor to carry herself with such quiet strength. Her body looked thin, her clothes still torn, but her eyes were clear. She was not broken. She was ready. He led her to the field, where weeds had crept up between rows of wheat crop. The soil was hard, cracked by too many days without rain. He placed a tool in her hands and waited, half thinking she would not know how to use it. But she bent to the ground with practiced movement, pulling weeds, breaking the soil, clearing space for growth. Her pace was slow at first, then steady, each motion driven by purpose. The farmer watched in silence. Her work carried no complaint, no pause. She did not lift her head for hours. By midday, her back was wet with sweat, her arms streaked with dust. Yet she did not stop. When he finally told her to rest, she shook her head. "If I rest, my children may starve tomorrow. Let me finish this row." Her words struck him again, the weight of her will stronger than her fragile frame. Meanwhile, the children stayed near the house. The farmer checked on them quietly when he could. They were weak, but the bread and water he had given were slowly bringing back life to their small faces. The boy's cough grew softer, the girl's eyes brighter. They watched their mother from the doorway, whispering in their own tongue as if afraid to disturb her struggle. Days passed this way. Every morning the mother rose before the farmer. She worked the soil, cut the weeds, carried water, and gathered wood. Her hands grew blistered, but she said nothing of the pain. In the evenings she washed the dirt away and returned to her children, singing soft words in her strange language until they fell asleep. The farmer, though silent, began to notice her presence changing his land. The rows grew cleaner, the soil softer. For the first time in weeks he felt hope that his crop might live. But something else changed too. The silence of his world felt less heavy. At night, when he sat by the small fire, he could hear the soft laughter of the children as their mother told them stories. He could not understand the words, but the sound of it filled the dark with warmth. Still, unease lingered in his chest. He knew the villagers would soon hear whispers. His land was not far from their road. Already one neighbor had passed by and looked too long at the strange figures in the field. The farmer's stomach tightened with worry. One evening, as the sky turned red with the setting sun, the alien mother came to him. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but her eyes held calm strength. "You gave us food. You gave us shelter. I will not forget this. My life belongs to this land now. If others come to harm it, I will stand beside you." Her voice carried no doubt. It was not only a promise, it was a bond. The farmer nodded once, unable to find the right words. He was not used to someone standing with him. For years his fight had been his alone. Now he felt the strange weight of shared survival. The children, too, were changing. The boy, though thin, now walked the fields slowly, carrying small bundles of sticks. The girl followed with a jug of water, smiling shyly when the farmer looked at her. They were still weak, but they were no longer fading. Life was returning to them piece by piece. One night, as the farmer prepared to close his door, he heard voices on the road beyond his field. Two men passed by, their words sharp, carried by the wind. Did you see them? Strangers on his land. Not human. He's a fool. No good will come of it. Their laughter cut through the night. The farmer stood still, his hand tight on the door. The warning was clear. Soon the village would know. Soon questions would come. He turned his eyes to the small room where the children slept, their breath soft and steady. He thought of the mother, still awake, mending the torn edge of her dress by the firelight. The farmer felt a storm waiting beyond the horizon. Yet as he looked at them, fragile but alive, he knew he could not turn back. The work had begun. Not only in the fields, but in his heart. And from this work, both hope and danger would grow. The days grew warmer, and with them, the whispers began to spread. The farmer noticed it first when he walked to the village market for salt and grain. Men paused in their talk when he entered. Women lowered their voices but did not lower their eyes. He could feel their stares like thorns pressing into his back. One man, tall and sharp-faced, muttered loud enough for all to hear, "He works his land with creatures now." Another laughed bitterly. "Let him. When trouble comes, we will not share in it." The farmer kept his head down, finished his trade quickly and walked home. But the words clung to him like smoke. Trouble, they said. Always trouble when outsiders came. That evening, as he reached his farm, he saw the alien mother working in the fading light. Her children gathered twigs near the fence, their laughter soft but bright. It was the first time he had heard them laugh freely. Yet behind that sound, shadows pressed closer. He said nothing of the whispers to her, but she seemed to sense it. That night when the children slept, she spoke by the fire. "They do not want us here," she said quietly, her eyes reflecting the flames. "I have felt such eyes before. They will not stop at whispers." The farmer shifted uneasily. "This is my land. What I choose here is no one's business." Her gaze held his, calm yet filled with warning. Men believe everything is their business when fear guides them. The days passed, and the tension grew heavier. Strangers lingered longer by his fields. They looked at the children, at her, with expressions that were not kind. The farmer worked harder, pretending not to see, but his nights grew restless. He dreamed of fire, of angry voices, of doors broken down. One afternoon, while repairing his fence, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see 3 men from the village standing there, arms crossed, faces set hard. "We've heard the stories," one said. "We've seen the proof with our own eyes. You've let them into your home." The farmer straightened, gripping his hammer tightly. "They are no threat." "They are not human," the man spat, "and not welcome. We've lost too much to trust their kind." The second man stepped closer, voice sharp as steel. "Turn them out. Send them away. If you don't, you'll bring ruin on us all." "Yes, he." Farmer's jaw tightened. Fear stirred in his stomach, but something else rose stronger. Anger. He thought of the children sleeping on his floor, their faces finally touched by life instead of hunger. He thought of the mother's back bent in his fields, her hands blistered but never still. "No," he said firmly. "They stay." The men's eyes narrowed. One leaned in close. "Then their fate will be your fate. Remember that." Without another word, they turned and left, their footsteps heavy against the dry earth. That night, the farmer could not rest. The mother sat across from him, silent, sewing a tear in her son's shirt. She did not ask what the men had said. She already knew. The firelight flickered between them. Finally, she spoke. "They will come again." He nodded slowly. "I know," her voice lowered, soft but steady. "If danger comes, I will not run. I will stand beside you, My life is already tied to this land. Her words should have eased him, but they only deepened his thoughts. Could they truly stand against the village if anger turned to violence? He was one man. She was one woman with children to protect. Yet when he looked at her eyes, he saw no fear. He saw a resolve as strong as stone. Days stretched into weeks and the pressure grew heavier. Each time he entered the market, the stares grew colder. He noticed fewer men willing to trade fairly. He felt the weight of being marked, set, apart. At night he watched the road beyond his farm. Torches sometimes flickered in the distance, though no one came near. It was a warning, silent but clear. The farmer sharpened his tools, not for crops, but for defense. He stored water, checked his doors, and taught the children to stay close to the house. The mother, too, prepared quietly. She kept a knife hidden in her clothing, her eyes always alert, her body ready. The piece of the farm, fragile and precious, now balanced on the edge of a blade, and in the heart of it all, the farmer felt a strange fire building inside him. He had lived quietly for so long, keeping to himself, fearing nothing but hunger. Now for the first time he was willing to fight, for his land, for his choice, and for the strangers who no longer felt like strangers. But the shadows of fear were growing darker, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they stepped fully into his fields. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against the skin like a warning. The farmer sat by the window, his hand wrapped around a rough wooden handle of a tool he had sharpened into a weapon. He had grown used to watching the road after dark, but tonight his chest carried a weight he could not shake. Something felt different, as if the air itself whispered of danger. The alien mother moved quietly through the house, laying her children to sleep. Her movements were careful, protective, but her eyes flicked to the door again and again. She felt it too. The storm that had been building in whispers and stares was close now. It came with the crunch of footsteps outside the gate. Not one, but many. The farmer rose, heart hammering, and pushed the door open. In the dim glow of the moon, he saw shadows moving across his field. Figures with torches moving slow but sure, their fire lighting the dry soil in flickering orange. The farmer's mouth tightened. The villagers had come. One voice called out sharp against the night. "Turn them out, farmer, you had your chance, do it now or your farm burns with them inside." The children stirred at the noise, fear filling their small eyes. The mother knelt, whispering calm words, then stood and placed herself by the farmer's side. Her face was pale but unshaken. "You will not face this alone," she said firmly. The farmer looked at her, a strange strength filling his chest. For years he had lived without anyone to stand beside him. Now in his darkest hour she stood like a shield. The men outside grew louder, their threats rising like fire. Some struck the fence with sticks, others waved torches high. The farmer stepped forward, his voice carrying across the night. "They stay," he called. "If you want them gone, you'll have to take them by force." A silence followed, broken only by the crackle of flame. Then the crowd moved closer. The first torch struck the wooden fence, flames licking dry wood. The children screamed. The farmer rushed forward, knocking the torch to the dirt and stamping it out. A man swung a stick toward him, but before it landed, the alien mother moved. Her body darted like lightning, her hand gripping the man's arm. With strength that shocked even the farmer, she twisted and shoved him back, his stick falling useless to the ground. Another man lunged, but she kicked the torch from his grasp, sparks scattering into the night. The crowd roared in anger, but the sudden force of her defense made them hesitate. She did not look like a weak beggar now. She looked like a warrior, carved from survival itself. The farmer grabbed his sharpened tool, swinging it with raw strength to drive the men back from the fence. His voice rose, fierce and unshaken. "This is my land. You will not take what is mine." The mother stood beside him, her hair wild in the torchlight, her eyes burning with fire. Together they pushed back, defending not only the field, but the fragile family they had built. The villagers shouted, cursed, and struck. But each time they advanced, they were forced back by the combined will of the farmer and the alien mother. At last, when the night was deep and the moon high, the crowd began to break. Fear replaced anger in their faces. They had come expecting a frightened farmer and a weak alien. Instead, they had faced a wall of defiance, stronger than they imagined. One by one, the men stepped back, dragging their torches away. Their voices grew softer until only silence returned to the field. The farmer and the mother stood breathing hard, sweat and smoke clinging to their skin. The children rushed out, clinging to their mother, their eyes wide with relief. She knelt and wrapped them close, whispering words of safety. The farmer dropped his tool and leaned against the fence, his chest rising and falling. He looked at her, at the way she held her children, at the strength that had carried her through the fire of the night. "You saved more than my land," he said quietly. She met his gaze. "And you saved more than my children." In that moment, something unspoken bound them together. Not just survival, not just gratitude. It was trust, sealed in fire and fear, stronger than any oath. As the night settled, the farm lay scarred but still standing. The villagers had been driven away, but the farmer knew they would not forget. More danger might come. Yet for the first time he did not feel alone in facing it. He looked at her again, this stranger who had walked into his field with nothing but hunger and desperation. Now she stood as his ally, his equal, his shield. And in the quiet after the storm he realized that together they had discovered something stronger than fear, the bond of survival. The dawn came slowly, carrying with it the smoke of the night before. The farmer stood in his field, staring at the blackened patches along the fence where fire had licked but failed to spread. The ground bore the marks of struggle, footprints, pressed deep into the dirt, broken sticks scattered, a torch left behind. The farm had survived, but so had something else, something far more fragile than soil or wood. Inside the house, the alien mother cared for her children. She washed their faces, combed their silver hair gently with her fingers, and whispered songs in her strange tongue. Their laughter returned in soft bursts, weak but alive. The farmer watched from the doorway, a heaviness lifting from his chest. They had endured. He walked the field with her later that morning. The air was cooler, the sky clear. She moved beside him with quiet strength, her hands rough and blistered but unshaken. Every weed she pulled, every patch of soil she turned, carried a message. She belonged here now, bound to the land by her will and his choice. Yet the farmer knew the village would not forget. He saw their faces in his mind, heard their threats echoing. More might come, and with them more fire. But when he looked at her standing tall with the children at her side, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt a harvest growing, not of grain, but of trust and unity. That evening, as the sun sank low, the mother came to him. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. "You gave us life when you had no reason to. You stood against your own people for us. Tell me, human. Why?" The farmer did not answer at once. His eyes drifted over the field, over the crops that were beginning to rise again under her care. He thought of the loneliness that had filled his days, the silence that had haunted his nights. He thought of his own hunger as a child, saved only by a stranger's hand. At last he said, "Because I could not do otherwise. Because when I saw your children, I saw myself." Her eyes softened, and for the first time since she had come, her face carried something more than exhaustion. It carried peace. The children came running then, carrying a small bundle of wildflowers they had found near the stream. They placed it in the farmer's hand with shy smiles. He held the fragile stems carefully, his heart stirring in ways he had long forgotten. The days turned into weeks, and the farm grew stronger. The children's cheeks filled with color, their laughter brighter now, their steps lighter. The mother's hands shaped the land with tireless effort, her presence turning silence into life. The farmer changed too. He no longer walked his land as a man alone. He worked beside her, sharing tools, sharing words few but enough, sharing the weight of each day. He found himself listening for the sound of the children's laughter, waiting for her voice by the fire, watching the way her eyes reflected strength even in weariness. One night, as the sky filled with stars, the farmer sat outside with her. The children slept nearby, curled together under a blanket. The air was cool, the fields stretching wide and quiet around them. "They may come again," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Let them," he replied. "This land has seen worse, and now, it is not mine alone." Her eyes turned to him, and in their depth he saw not just survival but something deeper, respect, gratitude, and the beginning of trust that needed no words. The farmer breathed deeply, the air filled with the scent of soil and growth. For the first time in many years, he felt not the weight of loneliness but the strength of belonging. He understood now that true harvest was not measured only in grain or bread, but in bonds that grew stronger than fear, stronger than hate. When the sun rose again, the farm stood alive, and so did they. Farmer, mother, and children, bound not by blood or kind, but by the simple truth that compassion was stronger than fear. And as the farmer looked across his fields, he knew the land had given him more than a crop that season. It had given him a family, and with it, a reason to fight for more than just himself. This was humanity's true harvest, not food, not survival alone, but the choice to stand together when the world tried to tear them apart.